published poems, criticism, translations, and many short stories. Some of them have been translated into Urdu, Marathi, and English. Mr. Kiradu was conferred upon the prestigious Bharat Bhushan Agarwal Smriti Award for his first published poem in 2000. He's a translator in Hindi, English, and Rajasthani. He was an associate editor with Rajasthan Sahitya Academy for a brief period. Mr. Kiradu has also organized some memorable literary events as creative head. Besides teaching English in the university, he is an editor with Sihai. Thank you.
I became a novelist because of Midnight's Children, of course. And when I try to recall the first experience of reading Midnight's Children, rather than the intellectual effect it had on me, what I can relive is the full-bodied experience of reading a book like that. Of course, over the years, I've understood the book intellectually. I've understood the entire body of Salman's work over the decades that I've been practicing the craft. But the book, and I have to say T capital, B capital, the book remains a landmark for a huge number of writers of my generation, preceding generations and succeeding generations. What Salman did with Midnight's Children was a milestone. For a hot, dusty country like ours, he finally used overheated language. He problematized English and presented the way we think, we speak to a worldwide audience. It was with a lot of excitement, of course, when I heard that Deepa was going to be making, the film was underway. And when I saw it, the film also kind of gave me the same full-bodied sense of immersion in that whole mood of the book, in the whole milieu which Salman had tried to capture. So thank you, Deepa, for making a wonderful film, and I'd like to open the stage now.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes,
no,
you're
right? Well, I think big hand to Deepa Mehta. Thanks for a lovely evening. It's not very often outside of a film festival that you get to be with the filmmaker right after you've seen a film. There's obviously a discussion that the audience would like to make. There's a huge discussion that we're going to have here. But I'll just kick it off straight away with a very simple question, Deepa. And no matter what people may say about the film, one thing that comes across quite clearly among a lot of people who, whether they admire the film or not, is that it's very faithful to the book. And that's something that even Altaf touched upon. Do you treat that as a compliment?
When I asked Salman Rushdie if I could have the rights to Midnight's Children to make it into a film, and he said, yes, you can. I mean, I spent the next 3 days saying I'm such a fool, because perhaps I shouldn't even be trying to do a film based on such an iconic book. It's I've joked with you about there is a thing called the adaptation police, which really just admirers of a book, as I have been in the past, and have been either disappointed or saying the film is better, which is terrible for the writer. So either way, it's very rarely that you have a win-win situation. So to answer your question, to be precise, I mean, I think that I was apprehensive, and I think that it was important for me, and that I remain as faithful to the book as I could, because it was the book that inspired me to make the film.
Right. But when given that film is largely known as a director's medium, and if anything, the writer in a film or the screenwriter in a film is one of the various tools for a director to realize his or her vision. when you have a screenwriter like Salman Rushdie, also as the co-writer of this film, and the writer of Midnight Children, as he happens to be, to what extent does he stop being a tool in that vision? And in fact, in this film, we even hear Salman Rushdie's voice throughout. To what extent does it become Salman Rushdie's movie rather than Deepa Mehta's adaptation of Midnight Children?
I'm sure to a large extent, and perhaps that has been, I mean, Salman and myself have
Is that a
talked
good
about
thing?
it. It wasn't earlier, but now I sort of think it's funny. I like it. It's, you know, it just feels right. But I feel very strongly that that when we decided to do the film, Salman did not want to write the screenplay.
Okay.
So I really had to spend a lot of time convincing him to write it. And the reason I wanted him to do it, and he wanted me to write it, so we used to keep on saying, no, you write it, you write it. And finally he said, why do you want me to do it? And I said, because it's, first of all, because he's a good writer. He's a good screenplay writer. He'd written the miniseries.
The television
yeah,
episode,
exactly,
right.
and it's pretty good. And I felt that the way he could be disrespectful to his own book, nobody else could be. And I wanted that very badly. I mean, it would have not, whether it was me or anybody else, I think it would have been very difficult to sit there and say, I don't want 4 chapters of Midnight's Children, or let's get rid of 10 characters of Midnight's Children. And the other, and before we made that commitment, I said to him, let's just go away. You and myself, you go back to New York and I'll go back to Toronto, and let's write down what we think are the beats of the film. How do we go from one scene to the next scene, from the beginning of the film to the end of the film?
Separately.
Separately.
Okay.
And let's get back together. And if our visions are in collision, we should not be doing it. Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life fighting with Salman Rushdie, saying, I don't agree
Nobody
with you.
does.
I mean, nobody does. I mean, you can't win, really. I mean, he's pretty good with
Right.
with the language.
He'd write a book on it.
Yes, he would. He's terrific, actually. And it was, and we did that, and we got together about like a month later and sat down and exchanged pieces of paper. And they were very similar.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And I've still got those 2 pieces of paper. And what was also interesting was, I mean, this is just dates me, I'm sure, is that they were both written separately by hand. None of them were typed or on the computer. Little things. It was just felt, yes, the same generation. In fact, more or less the same sort of association with India, then becoming a part of the diaspora, NRIs. I mean, we had a lot in common.
Right. But you know, like, given that you spoke of the so-called adaptation police, and I'm sure you saw it coming, given that it's such an acclaimed book, there would be the Midnight Children Nazis who would hate any adaptation of any kind. But personally for you, what do you think a screenplay can achieve or a film can achieve that a book cannot, and vice versa? Because it's perhaps a debate as old as movies, that movies never turn out to be as good as the books are. And a lot of times some of the greatest films are based on books that are not so extraordinary. What is it that a film manages to do that a book doesn't? What is it that a book manages to do that a film doesn't?
Well, I mean, cinema is about the images. It is about showing and not saying, which is, of course, the big difference between. Right. So you can have reams and reams of dialogue in it, like Altaf was saying in Midnight's Children, which is just fantastic, the language. And we don't have that. I mean, the dialogue in Midnight's Children, the film, is maybe if you put it together, like maybe 10 pages, that's it. The rest is all actually images. That's the big difference. And in fact, it was, again, my desire to hear the language, which is what enthralled me about Midnight's Children when I first read it. Hear Salman's language, that I felt that he should narrate the film. Because he was Salim. He is Salim.
Did you at any point consider the film to be in Hindustani, given that that would be the language that these characters would have otherwise spoken in?
Well, the book's in English. And,
right.
What we did is that most of the film is in Hindustani, and in Kashmiri, and in Bengali, and in Marathi. So
They speak more Hindi in the film. I don't know if this is working or not.
yeah,
But they speak more Hindi in the film, for instance, in some of the scenes, and I think in the book they do. Yeah, and I'm wondering how that choice was made. I mean, I can understand this is a family that probably is used to speaking English, but there are moments between, Salim's mother and Salim's father, for instance, they'll break into Hindi. And I'm wondering what was the decision?
those choices happened during the rehearsals.
Right.
When we were rehearsing with the actors, and I felt that yes, they said their dialogue, but it didn't feel right. It didn't sit right. Speaking English, the Aya speaking, Mary speaking English, didn't. It just nobody does that. Or the chai wala selling tea in a train is not saying buy some tea. He's saying chai le lo, chai le lo. Those kind of things happen throughout, and most of that happened during the rehearsals.
My question also had to do with what Altaf and you referred to also. I mean, your film stands by itself, and then there was a book. The challenge of taking a book which is so rich in language, forget the fact that it's such a big epic story itself. And of course, Salman then wrote the script, but the decisions you guys made in terms of transforming the book into the script so that it is more filmable as such. And also, some obvious things are missing. For example, Padma character is missing. I was just wondering what kind of conversations you and Salman had, how the screenplay was going to stand by itself. It was not going to be Midnight Children, the book. And, when you made decisions to change it.
I have to tell you, the usual length of a screenplay is about 120 pages, and that's considered long. The first draft that Salman actually gave me of Midnight's Children was 298 pages. That's a film that would last twice the length of Three Idiots, so you can imagine.
As long as Gangs of Wasseypur.
Yes, as long as Gangs of Wasseypur, which I really like, by the way. So then you get something like 2 and 9. So it was a very interesting. I mean, I've had a relationship as a writer, director with Salman for 3 years. Before we started making the film, and it was about give and take. It was about he would be the screenwriter who sent me the draft of the script, 298 pages, and I said, Salman, this is
not a
not
book.
doable. And he said, maybe we can have a sequel. It's very
Deepa,
sweet.
did he not write the TV adaptation first, and did he pare that down into a script?
No,
How did that
no,
work?
not at all.
That's a completely separate thing of its
Completely
own?
different. I mean, if you can actually buy the TV adaptation.
Okay.
You buy it and you see the screenplay of which you can also buy now of Midnight's Children. See that they're completely
That would be
different.
about 5 or 6 hours long?
That was
Or
what
more?
7 hours, I
7
think.
hours.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And the trajectory is quite different, and for me, I mean, what I said to Salman, which is very important for me, was that what attracted me to the book was the concept of family. What is the concept of family? If it isn't our blood, can we still feel like family? The whole search of Salim is the search for a family, and that is the immediate thing of the film. And the canvas, of course, is the search of India for an identity. So both of them were, in complemented each other. So my focus as a filmmaker was, in fact, that. And therefore, Padma's character wasn't there. And so if you look at the film outside the book, if people haven't read the book, then they'll say that this is a film about a country trying to find itself and a human being trying to find himself. It's a film about identity.
Right. I mean, sorry. You wanna go?
No, Deepa, I remember reading some.
Yeah, it's on.
Is it on?
Yeah.
I think I read somewhere that Salman Rushdie had called Midnight's Children an intimate history, an intimate epic. It has that scale of the whole midnight of freedom and the whole journey to certain problematic periods of Indian history, which were, as you very rightly said, woven with the whole development of the character. So that, to me, was a very interesting juxtaposition. And also somewhere, even though it's about events that my generation is completely familiar with, there was a very fairy tale quality to it. You know, it was like history told as a fairy tale, which I found, or fairy tale told as history, you know, which were very interesting kind of elements that I saw more in the film and also in the book. You know, I don't have such a sharp memory of the book because to me the film became a complete experience by itself. I didn't feel that I had to see the film and go back to references from the book to make connections. So there was a very, you know, in a certain way it became also a very interesting documentation told with a certain personalized, intimate way to a generation which had not perhaps been part of the emergency or the sterilization program or or the Bangladesh war. So I found, I mean, I'm not asking a question, I'm just giving a response that I had to the film. And as you very rightly said, you know, the family, the search for family, the search for identity, the search for self became actually also the search of the times that one was passing through during that whole, you know, the arc that was drawn.
So, I mean, you know, that's answering your question again, that, so I feel that when I